Hey, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. Many of you know that I am a huge Notion stan, but lately I have been trying something new that I'm actually pretty excited for. And that's not to say that I am abandoning Notion by any means, but I have found something that complements the app really well and fills in a lot of the gaps that I've been having in my current workflow. The biggest issue I've been struggling with is that Notion can be great for note-taking and for task management, but when it comes to time management, it falls a little bit short. And unfortunately, that is something that I struggle with quite a bit. Right now, Notion doesn't really have any good solutions for this, so I have been using Google Calendar and iCal as sort of a stand-in for now, but both of those drive me a little bit crazy just because of syncing issues and the fact that you can't put 15-minute increments on top of each other. I have no idea why. So in general, I find that these apps are really good at event management, but they're not necessarily built to support time blocking. And that is where today's sponsor, Akiflow, comes in. Akiflow is primarily a time blocking application that specializes in two-way integration. So what that means is instead of being an all-in-one app, they specialize in taking all of your tasks from different software and different apps that you might be using and putting them into one place to be organized and viewed all at once. And this can include your emails, your events from calendars, tasks from Todoist, Notion, Slack. And what's really helpful is not only are you seeing all these tasks in one place, but you're seeing them next to your calendar. Now, instead of just staring at the camera and listing out a bunch of different features, I'm gonna go ahead and walk you through the basics using the app. And since I have been using them for a month now, I'll also walk you through how I have been personally using Akiflow, in particular with my Notion and with my Google Calendar. Let's get started. All right, we are now in the Akiflow desktop app. They do have a web app as well. And I wanted to start off in the integrations tab. This is just under settings when you're originally setting things up, just to show you some of the different integrations you can have. I currently have my Google Calendar, my Gmail, my Notion, as I discussed earlier. And there's also a lot of other native integrations. You can use Slack, you can use Asana, Jira, Zoom, you can plan meetings directly from here. They also connect to Zapier, so if there's other things that aren't currently integrated natively, you do have the option to connect that as well. IFTTT, you can do Spotify, Evernote, all that jazz. And I can show you how I have my Notion set up. So once you have integrated this is a two-way connection, which means that anything you put into Notion, if you have set it up to come into Akiflow, it's gonna be automatically captured in the Akiflow app. And if you edit any of the tasks that come in from Notion or any of the notes that come in from Notion, they are gonna be edited on the Notion side as well, which is pretty cool. Not a lot of apps are able to do that. And I can show you my configuration for one of my spaces. If you have seen one of my old Notion videos, you'll know that all of my tasks are in a database called all tasks. So I just select that and it's pulling from that information. If you have certain team members, you can also filter these tasks by ones that are assigned to you. There are also custom import filters. You can see that I'm importing based off of the status of my tasks. And I'll go into this a little bit later, but for now, you can just see that the active or soon status are getting imported into here. You can also choose a done and undone property. So when you bring in these tasks from Notion and they get imported into your Akiflow, if you select done, it's going to change that status that you select here to done in your Notion. So mine is a checkbox, for example, which means that when I select done in Akiflow, it automatically checks it in that checkbox property within Notion. You can also decide what the schedule date is gonna be and the deadline date. If you don't, it's automatically gonna go into your inbox. But I have a due date when I plan to do a task. And so if a task has that attached to it from Notion, it automatically gets imported into that day in Akiflow as well. I really appreciate all of this automation just because having to redo properties or having to do something in two places, it gets really messy, it's very cumbersome. And I've been trying really hard just to simplify my processes, and this has been very, very helpful in that regard. Let's go back to the main page. So if we look over here on the menu, this is the different ways that tasks and events are categorized. If you're familiar with getting things done, they use an inbox. A lot of other methodologies use inboxes. It's just a place to capture any sort of thoughts, ideas, tasks that have yet to be processed and captured. And then if we go to upcoming, you can see all of the tasks that have been assigned for any upcoming days. These are not necessarily scheduled in the calendar yet, but you have said that I would like to do this on this day or be reminded of it on this day. You can also add tasks directly here. So let's say I want to do something on the 28th. I could just type in task and add it. There's also an all tasks area. So here you can see all of your tasks at once if you so choose. I don't really go into here that much, but it's there. There's also a tab for all of your planned tasks. So anything that's been scheduled. They have a snooze option as well, which I think is pretty cool. If there's a task in your inbox that you just don't really want to be reminded of right now, or something that was planned for today and I know halfway through the day I'm not going to get to it, I want to just remind myself for tomorrow, you can snooze it. There's different options to snooze for the next day, upcoming week. You get the gist. And then there's also a someday category here. I don't use this that much. Again, I'm trying to simplify my task management as much as possible, so I'll explain a little bit later why I don't use this. But in general, someday is just for tasks that you're probably not going to process right now, so you want to take them out of the inbox. They don't have a date you're going to work on them, and you just want to store them somewhere. Now, if we go into today, this is where the magic happens and where I spend 95% of my time. You're going to be able to see this really great overview of your tasks and your calendar at the same time. This is what makes Akiflow, I think, really a great companion to Notion, because you can't get this kind of view in Notion. You can maybe add times that you plan to complete a task, but it's pretty cumbersome. It's not easy to understand visually, like the interface doesn't really work for me. And again, I was using Google Calendar before to do this manually, but having them separated and having to update things in different places, it's a big time sink. When you're trying to just get things done and not spend a ton of time planning and more time doing, it can be very annoying after a while. You can see now under my to-do list, these are all tasks that have not been scheduled, and the ones that are on the calendar are all here. And then there's also a done section. So they categorize it for you and section it off a little bit, which is nice. And I can take this task and drag it right into my calendar. And it's there, and it moves into scheduled on calendar. And now we can see the task here. I can also go ahead and put this back onto here if I want to unplan it. But for the most part, I do try to make sure that almost all of my tasks are scheduled on my calendar the day of or the morning of, because if it's not on my calendar, especially if you are an avid time blocker, it means that I'm not going to get to it because I've set aside time for everything that I can do. And it's a really great reminder for any of you that tend to overplan or be overambitious or just have a little bit of time blindness. I know I'm definitely the kind of person who will stack up 20 things in my to-do list that each take 4 hours and then wonder by the end of the day why I got nothing that I wanted to done. So having to actually force myself to put it in my calendar, see where I have time, and then prioritize and maybe delete things, move things around because I realized that I don't have as much time as I thought I did. It's been a very good system for me so far. And it's helping me a lot with managing my time and prioritizing and making sure that I'm not overcommitting. Now, one of my favorite features so far is actually right here in the calendar. When you add an item, it can either be a task, event, or a slot. And a task, pretty self-explanatory. You're gonna say this 30 minutes I'm spending working on a video. An event, again, self-explanatory, doctor's appointment, meetings. But then we have time slots, which are a little bit different than either of those. And this is something that doesn't really exist in Google Calendar in the same way. And it was very frustrating for a while because when you're putting in events in Google Calendar, all of your events, whether or not they are appointments, meetings, things that can't be moved that are true events, or they are intentions to do something that is flexible, they're all treated the same, right? They're all events at the end of the day. And I like that there is a distinction here. In general, I like to use time slots as a way to set aside time to work on specific contexts or areas of my life. So for example, this might be YouTube. And I'm setting aside 2 hours every Sunday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. that I intend to work on YouTube. Again, this is not an event, so I can move it if I want to, but I want it in my calendar just so I have that reminder and so it's blocked out. There's also options where you can lock this in your calendar. So if you want other people to see it and make sure that they can't schedule over it, you can do that as well. And when you're inside one of these time slots, you can actually add in tasks. So let's say Sunday the 29th, I decide I want to work on new thumbnail brainstorm video ideas. So now you can see these tasks have been added over here, but they're also scheduled within a very specific time. So you can see how this can be useful if over time you want to set aside a block of committed time to, projects, to work, to personal time, and have them reoccurring week over week. And then when you go in and plan your tasks for the week, you can just pull them into any of those time blocks, knowing that you've already set aside a time. And then when you're going through and completing these tasks, originally you'll see on the calendar there's a 2 and it's purple. If I were to check off one of these, now we see that goes down to a 1, check off 2. You can see the 2 is now green. So it gives you a little countdown. It lets you know that there's still items in here that need to be completed, and you still get a little bit of a, satisfaction from checking everything off. What's also nice is you can add in reoccurring tasks in here as well. So my weekly wrap up every Sunday has my weekly review, my inbox 0, finance review, and updating my field notes or book notes. So this time slot is being repeated every week on Sunday, and all of these tasks within it are also being repeated. This is another thing that I really struggled with in Notion because they don't have reoccurring tasks. Well, they do have reoccurring tasks, but it doesn't really work in the same way. And depending on how your database is set up, the way that they've implemented it doesn't work. And unfortunately, the way mine is set up, because I don't have, I think it was due dates. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I would have had to go through and redo all of my tasks in my all task list, and there's thousands in there. So I was manually adding tasks every single week, which was very frustrating. And I'm glad I have something to automatically do that, because it's 2023 and every app should be able to do this really simply by now, honestly. Now, before we jump into workflow, there's a couple other features I wanted to touch on real quick, one of which is labels. Labels, for the most part, are used as, like context or areas of your life. You can also have a folder and bundle different labels into them. Now, these labels can only be used once. So if I label this as Wesleyana, change it to personal, you can see it's not going to label it as both Wesleyana and personal. Tags, on the other hand, these can be used multiple times. The way I use these is to have my labels take care of the context of my life. I have a personal one for my YouTube channel, one for work, one for combat culture, which is my other channel, my gym, and then any essentials, getting ready, having lunch, commuting, things that are non-negotiables. Any task can fit into one of these categories. So if I click on one of these labels, you can see that everything that has the label personal will show up, and you're gonna see everything from inbox and things that are scheduled, things that might be in snooze and someday. And then you can also go ahead and further filter these. So I have some that are, for example, errand. If I click under personal and errand, you're gonna see all of my personal errands. Pretty self-explanatory. I keep my tags pretty simple, but I have some, for example, quick. If I have a couple minutes, I can see what I can complete that is a quick win. If I wanna just bust out some emails, if I wanna run errands, if I just wanna bundle different tasks together, I can look through these tags and see what is possible to do at the same time. Now, the last thing I want to show you is the command bar. You can access this by using Command K on Mac. And this works just like any other calendar productivity application where you say, work on video on Friday, 3 p.m. It'll create that for you automatically. That's pretty nice, but what I think is even cooler is the fact that akiflow is really set up to use shortcuts. And as someone who pretty much grew up using Photoshop and Adobe and a lot of design programs, I live my life in shortcuts. And without shortcuts in an app, I feel like everything is so much slower, so much more cumbersome. And there's also different shortcuts for the calendar. So right now you're seeing an entire week, but I can also just see 3 days at a time. I can see 4 days at a time, 5 days at a time, 6 days at a time, or the entire week. And if I click on an item, I can also automatically add the tags from here. I'm literally not using a cursor at all right now. I'm just doing everything on the keyboard, which is awesome. All right, now that we have the basics down, I am gonna take you guys through a little tour of how I've been using akiflow for the past couple weeks, I think almost a month now. And if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you probably use Notion to some degree, since that's how a lot of you guys have found me. And if you are someone who is looking to up your Notion game, I think you're gonna find this really, really interesting. So I usually start my planning at the beginning of the week on Sunday for my weekly review, which still happens in Notion. I go through and complete all of this first, and then do my whole brain dump in my daily note on Apple Notes, go through my trigger list, check my email, my calendar, make sure that I have everything coming in from just, different projects and work and all different areas of my life captured in one place. And I actually still capture that within Notion. It's something that I might change in the future, but I'm not a fan of changing over your entire system all at once. I think doing it in bits and pieces at a time helps you, number one, not waste time just building something new, and two, you figure out what's really gonna work for you. So right now, I'm trying to keep a lot of my task management still in Notion. It's just that when it goes to akiflow, I'm able to actually schedule it and prioritize it. So when I do capture these tasks, I will process them by assigning a status. They either are active, in which case I will also assign it a due date, so a specific day that I expect to do it during the week. This is only if that activity really has to be done that day or I really want to do it that day. If it's something that is not this week, then I will assign it to soon. If it's something that is not this month, I will assign it to someday. And then if it is something that I might get to, I might not, I want to learn Thai, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. Who knows, right? That's just going to be captured in maybe. That's kind of my brainstorming, dreamer, bucket list category. And all of my soon tasks get processed during my weekly review. So it's kind of my recent backlog. My someday tasks get processed on a monthly basis, and then maybe will get processed on a quarterly and an annual basis. I also go through what's currently in my soon list, and I decide if anything's going to be moved to this week, and if it is, when should I be doing it. And then once I go back into akiflow, you can see that all of the tasks have already been pulled in and assigned to certain days from Notion. I didn't have to do anything for this. It's just the integration does it automatically. And all of the tasks that are being pulled from Notion, you can see them here. Again, if I were to check this off, if I were to delete it, make changes to it, that is going to be changed in Notion automatically for me. So these are all my active tasks that have due dates assigned. Any task that is from soon can be processed in my inbox. So all of those tasks that I added to the soon list are all going to be here, and throughout the week, if I decide that I have extra time, I can take them from here and put them into a specific day that I want to work on. I also have events from Google Calendar that are automatically imported into here as well. So you can see I have a flight, another flight, dinner with a friend. That's also really nice because as I'm planning my tasks and planning my week, I already see these things all in the same place and can plan around them. And now you can see why I don't like to use a someday here. I'd rather keep all of my someday maybes. Anything that's not within this week or potentially the upcoming week, which would be categorized as soon, I don't want it in here because I will get overwhelmed and I have so many tasks that I write down. So this is just to keep things focused and to keep it simple because your girl is scattered. So every day when I wake up, I come into this app, I plan my day. And first, you're able to review yesterday's work. You can see if you finish your goals, how much time you spent in different areas, the different events you had. You can see everything that you completed, which is really nice. And then you also see the items that you didn't complete, and you can decide if you're going to move them to today or snooze them for another time. Now, when you go to reviewing the current day, set your goal. You can see how much time you plan to spend in different areas, what events you have. They will show you your inbox, so all of your items that are on schedule next to your plan for the day. So if you think that you have extra time and you want to pull in some different items from here and, drag it into tasks, and then you click done, your day has been scheduled. And then as I go through the day, I'll just go ahead and check these off as they happen. And that, my friends, is how I have been using akiflow. Okay, now I'm sure some of you are asking, is this overkill? And my answer is yes, because time blocking is not just planning out your time, it's also time boxing and making sure that you are not spending more time than you need to on certain tasks, which is something that I tend to do a lot. I will definitely work on something as long as I am given. It's Parkinson's law. And I am also just very bad at unrealistic planning in general. So without seeing all of my tasks on a calendar and being able to schedule out my day, I will just run around in chaos for 16 hours until it's time to go to bed. I also think it's really important that if you are prone to workaholism, it actually is very critical that you schedule out time for yourself, for breaks, for socializing, for having fun, because if you don't do that, it can be very easy to just spend the entire day trying to get things done and then burn out weeks or months later. And if you're thinking, why not just chill? Why not just relax, get things done as they come? Then you are clearly not the person that this video is intended for. Thank you again to Akiflow for sponsoring this video, and if you're interested in giving them a try, check out the link in the description box below, and otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Bye.